Okay, good Saturday afternoon to everybody. This is Ryan Reifert, San Antonio business attorney here. And I wanted to come to y'all today with an explainer about the most recent developments in the Derek Chauvin trial. Of course, this is the police officer in Minneapolis who was found guilty of second-degree unintentional murder as well as several other crimes for the killing of George Floyd last year. Now, before we get any further, I want to ask everybody to go ahead, like, subscribe, comment. All right, now let's get into this. So, the judge this past week, I believe it was Tuesday, made a couple of findings as to aggravating factors, right? And I've had a couple of people ask me, what on earth does that even mean? What is an aggravating factor? Why do I care? What does that mean for the purposes of the Derek Chauvin trial? And what is that? Well, not the trial, the sentencing hearing. So I am neither a Minnesota attorney nor a criminal attorney, but I thought I would give you all kind of a little basic orientation and sort of shed a little bit of light on this. So in most criminal trials, you have two phases or two halves of the trial, right? Is you have the first half, which is the dude guilty or is the girl guilty, right? Is the defendant, did the defendant do it in a sense that is legally culpable, right? Are all of the elements of the crime proven beyond a reasonable doubt, right? And I had a previous video on that with regards to the defense's, kind of in my opinion, questionable strategy of throwing out things like carbon monoxide poisoning. Anyway, let's not editorialize too much there. That was the guilt or innocence phase, right? Like, that already happened. The jury came back and they found Chauvin guilty on all three counts, right? So now you have the sentencing phase, which is, okay, he did it. Now, how much time does he get, right? And there's sort of a formula that most states adopt that has a little bit of wiggle room within the formula, but is nonetheless a little bit like a math problem. So let me try to explain this. So you can have, and again, this varies from one state to another, and you also have the federal system, which is a whole other thing, whole other ball of wax. But you can have, speaking generally, you can have two sorts of findings that will have an impact on what the defendant's sentence will be. And those fall into, in different places, call them different things, etc. They fall into aggravating factors and mitigating factors. And what that means is an aggravating factor is something that makes the crime worse. It's something that is particularly heinous or particularly blameworthy, or that something that we as a society or as an electorate, whoever passed the law, has decided is particularly bad about this crime. So where, let's say a person who, steals something, that might normally, I don't know, let's pick something. Let's say if you steal a not so valuable object, maybe you normally get like a month in prison for that. And I don't know if that's the real sentence. I'm just making something up. But let's say if you stole that thing from a person who was disabled or an elderly person or something like that, that might be in the guidelines and say, look, this is a particularly heinous thing because, it's worse than the regular act of theft because the victim was someone who was, helpless or particularly vulnerable or that kind of thing. So that's just a random example. I have no idea if stealing from a disabled person or an elderly person is actually an aggravating factor in any state or in any wherever. It very well could be. It very well could not be. I don't know. I'm just making it up because those are vulnerable population. So that's an aggravating factor. A mitigating factor is the opposite, right? if an aggravating factor is, hey, here's this thing that makes the crime worse. A mitigating factor is, hey, here's the thing that makes the crime not so bad, right? So let's say, let's go back to the same example. Let's say, steal something that's not so valuable. Well, maybe a mitigating factor is, I only did it because, my family was starving and I had to feed them. Or, I only did it because of, I was under a whole bunch of peer pressure. Or, I only did it because I was abused as a child and, I have a tough upbringing. Or, I only did it because of blank. They're things that they do not absolve you from guilt for the crime, right? You are still blameworthy. You are still culpable in the legal sense. But here's something that makes it, maybe there's a little bit not so bad, right? Like maybe if you would normally get a month in prison for doing this thing, maybe you should only get 2 weeks or 3 weeks or something like that. It makes it not so bad. It's something that mitigates the crime. So in this case, in the Derek Chauvin trial, the judge this past week, like I said, I believe it was Tuesday, came out with a finding of several aggravating factors. Now, what does that mean? Well, for this specific case, what that means is there's a range without any mitigating or aggravating factors. There's a range, just baseline, that a second-degree unintentional murder can be sentenced to. The advisory guideline in Minnesota, and that's kind of the legal lingo for this, is they're the advisory guidelines. So the advisory guidelines for a second-degree unintentional murder without a criminal record are from, on the low end, well, low end is this way on the video, are on the low end from 10 years and 8 months, so a little bit over 10 years in prison, to on the high end 15 years in prison. Now, the judge can make a sentence within that range as presumptively okay and without any aggravating or any mitigating factors. What the judge has done in this past week is found aggravating factors that say, hey, I can do what's called an upward departure, meaning I can sentence Chauvin to more than 15 years if the facts and circumstances allow, blah, blah, based on these particular findings. Okay, so what were the aggravating factors that the judge found? The judge in this case found 4 aggravating factors. Now, what were these 4 aggravating factors? Well, the first one was that Chauvin abused a position of trust and authority as a police officer, right? That's to say, if you are in a position of trust and authority in society, if we put you in a place where you're meant to protect society, you're meant to take care of people, and you commit a crime in that position, that's particularly bad, right? It's the fox guarding the hen house kind of a thing. The second aggravating factor the judge found was that Chauvin had treated George Floyd with, quote, particular cruelty. Now, what that means is, in this particular case, that Floyd was begging for his life and saying, "Oh my God, I can't breathe," and was obviously aware of the imminent prospect of his death, but Chauvin nonetheless kept his knee on the neck. So that the judge found to be particular cruelty. The third aggravating factor here is that Derek Chauvin committed the crime as part of a group with at least 3 other people. And this reflects a judgment by the people of Minnesota acting through their legislature that groups of people who commit crimes are more culpable than kind of lone wolves who commit crimes. And the fourth aggravating factor is that children were present during the commission of the offense. So again, the people of Minnesota have decided that committing a crime itself is bad enough, but when you commit a crime like this in front of children, that is deserving of particular censure because you're showing these presumably innocent and malleable minds that this horrible thing. So remains to be seen what the other developments are going to be in this case, right? There's more to come, but the judge has found at least 4 aggravating factors here. So it's entirely possible that we're going to see an upward departure from the upper end of that 15-year guideline for second-degree murder. So again, stay tuned. I I apologize that I can't get into the kind of particulars of Minnesota law or of criminal law. But as I noted, I'm a Texas corporate attorney, and this is just kind of something that a lot of people have asked about, and a lot of people have been kind of pinging me with of, what does aggravating factor mean? What the hell is that? So hopefully this sheds a little bit of light on that and can give you guys a little bit more context when you hear them discussing it on the radio or the TV or whatnot. To really know in the overall scheme of things what an aggravating factor is and why it matters in the sort of formulaic world of criminal sentencing. So like, subscribe, comment, and I will see you guys next time. Thank you.